I completely forgot to add my rating for this, so I'm going to add it to the beginning of this review. I have a 7 out of 10 for this movie. Family. Hey everybody, welcome back to the LuckyDog podcast. This is your host, Elias Roush. This podcast is sponsored by LiasRoushMedia.com, photo, video, digital media production. Today we are discussing Furious 7, also known as Fast and the Furious 7, a 2015 action film directed by James Wan and written by Chris Morgan. It is the sequel to Fast and the Furious 6, 2013 movie, and the Fast and the Furious Tokyo Drift 2006, and the seventh installment in the Fast and the Furious franchise. The film stars an ensemble cast including Vin Diesel, Paul Walker in his final role, Dwayne Johnson, Michelle Rodriguez, Tyrese, Ludacris, Jordana Brewster, Dijon Hansmood, Tony Jaa, Ronda Rousey, Nathalie Emmanuel, Kurt Russell. We got Jason Statham. We got everybody in this freaking film. So, excuse me. There's so many people. I'm losing my voice. So, in the film, this is the light synopsis. In the film, Dominic Toretto, aka Bro, aka hashtag family, played by Vin Diesel, Dominic Toretto, Brian Connor, played by Paul Walker, and their team are recruited by covert ops leader Mr. Nobody, played by Kurt Russell, to prevent terrorist Mose Gigante, played by Hansu, from obtaining a hacking program. I believe it's called the God's Eye. Meanwhile, Deckard Shaw, played by Jason Statham, a rogue special forces assassin / agent, or whatever the fuck, seeking to avenge his comatose younger brother from the last movie, puts the team in danger once again. So why are we talking about this? Well, I think I reviewed the first 5 movies of the Fast and Furious franchise maybe 3 years ago. Has it been really that long? Maybe 3 years ago. And I had planned to go through 7, 8, and then when 9 was coming around, I believe I was leading up towards 9, and then the pandemic had happened, so everything was pushed back on 9, and I just hadn't recorded the rest of them. So yada yada yada. Everyone that's watching is like, I don't give a fuck. Blah, blah, blah. Anyways, I'm finally coming around to doing Furious 7 3 years later, 4 years later, whatever the fuck. This movie slaps. I think that the majority of everyone agrees that, as the movies progress, a lot of people love the first one by Rob Cohen. John Singleton brought an interesting flair with the second one. We had Justin Lin starting in a new direction with Tokyo Drift in the third one. Fourth one, we have Justin Lin returning, but it's starting to give us a little bit more of the blockbustery feel. But we are going way more in with the FBI agents type feel, and less of the street, quote unquote, streets are in it. The fifth one goes straight up in an action heist film, and that's when it really turns up the heat, in my opinion. And number 5 being directed again, I believe, by Justin Lin. Justin Lin's camera work in all of his movies, I think, is some of the best. With given the blend of real to CGI, but then we have this new flavor. So I feel like after Fast 5 in 2011, that's when it really kicked off the blockbustery feel that we know today, and most people agree with. In my mind, I was trying to remember Furious 6 and Furious 7. They blend in my head. Trying to remember from airport sequences in 6. I guess we'll be discussing all of the previous movies that have happened as much as possible. I do apologize if I really say any spoilers for the future movies up to 10 I've seen at this point. But again, these movies can't really be spoiled. It's mostly about the car sequence, chase scenes, and then heists and fights and just action in general. It's gone to the point of most people can't remember or distinguish the different movies after a certain point because they start to all kind of blend together. And I don't blame people for that. But when I was remembering Fast and Furious 6 and Furious 7, I couldn't remember exactly which sequences went in which, but going back and rewatching Seven again, Seven has a wonderful blend of. I think they go super heavy with the CG in six. I've already recorded the review 3 or 4 years ago, so go back and watch that on the LookItAllPodcast.com, whatever channel you're watching on YouTube, SoundCloud. We got them all on all those. Patreon.com/LookItAllPodcast has the full review for Fury, Fast and Furious 6. So the Furious 6 to 7, I think brings a lot more humanity and hashtag more family feels. I know everyone's going to say family about 100 million times in this, or family, whatever the Vin Diesel way of saying it. But I really do feel like Furious 7 has a surprising amount of heart, and it has a surprising amount of well choreographed action that feels like almost like a hat on a hat on a hat on a hat. Like the pacing in this feels very good for how much the action is just completely going. Sometimes action can become mundane after a certain amount of time watching it, just punches being blown, cars being blown up. People, it starts to get kind of repetitive in nature. I never felt like this movie ever felt repetitive in nature, which is something I was glad to go back and see. So let's discuss this a little bit more in depth. Um, Plans for a seventh installment were first announced in February 2012 when Johnson stated that the production on the film would begin after the completion of Fast and Furious 6. In April 2013, Wan, predominantly known for horror films, was announced to direct the film. Casting showed the returns of Diesel and Walker that same month. Principal photography began in September in Atlanta, but was indefinitely suspended in November after Walker died in a car crash. Filming resumed months later in April 2014 and ended in July, with Walker's brothers Caleb and Cody standing in to complete his remaining scenes, causing delay to its 2015 release, with other filming locations in LA, Colorado, Abu Dhabi, and Tokyo. Brian Tyler, who has last composed the score for Fast 5 2011, returned to compose the seventh installment with an estimated production budget of $250 million. It is one of the most expensive films ever made. And I think people are laughing at that now because depending on when you're listening to this, let's just say you're listening to this in 10 years, you're like, $250 million, that's a drop in the bucket. $250 million used to get you a lot. Now we are up to a production budget of, I want to get this right, production budget on Fast and Furious, Fast X, Fast 10, whatever the hell you want to call it. The budget is $340 million. Oh my goodness. Is that not ridiculous? Uh, Although bringing back all this family is not cheap. The cookouts become expensive and all these cars blowing up. It's an expensive ass um, feature to have on top of all this action compared to the first Fast and Furious movie, which started with a mere $38 million, which, give or take inflation, is probably closer to a little, maybe like 50, 60 million. But still, is that not ridiculous? And the first one only made a box office of $207 million, but they knew they had a hit right then. In June 22nd, 2001, Fast and Furious movie franchise was born. So let's continue on with Fast 7. let me just talk about my initial notes real quick. Furious 7, like I said, going into it, my head was kind of jumbling the different action scenes between 6 and 7. What had happened? Obviously, there's so much behind the scenes of this movie that plays so much into this movie of the Paul Walker death. I mean, not only is it extremely tragic on so many levels, and some people would say, unfortunately, ironic that someone of an actor that plays in a car franchise happens and he's not actually always racing those cars and the sequences and stuff like that, although a lot of it was done practically. He's an actor first, so it's just so weird that he would happen to have died in a car wreck, and they say it is of the most tragic manner, unfortunately. Like this is a little bit graphic. If you want to skip ahead 15 seconds, I understand. 30 seconds, give you half a second. um Apparently Paul Walker did burn to death in a car that his friend wanted to see him drive, and it, I don't have the details up in front of me, but from what I hear, they were testing out one of these really dangerous cars, and things just went bad, and it's apparently pretty sad. He was apparently, evidently, I don't have this in front of me, like I said, but he was in the car for a minute before, I don't know if it exploded or it was on fire or what. It was very sad though. And I remember hearing about the car wreck almost, I feel like it was immediately, because I want to say it happened in the middle of the day in 2013 November. I was probably in my second year of college. So yeah, I remember it just affecting me. I remember being kind of depressed for a few days, maybe a week, 2 weeks, or something like that. Just feeling the heaviness of it, because it he Paul Walker felt like one of these larger than life figures. Not only was he an awesome guy on screen to watch, very watchable guy, but apparently he was a great guy off screen too. Very, contributed to charities and did a lot of donations and stuff like that. Apparently, he was an awesome guy. So it was it's extremely sad to have lost this this individual as well. So let's continue on. I know that's a little bit heavy. But considering we did lose Paul Walker in this film, the way that they have the quote unquote ending for a quote unquote send off in a non spoilery way, I think is very tasteful. And it's difficult for franchises and movies. I want to say off the top of my head, to give these types of send offs to characters such as Brian O'Connor on here. Someone watching the Furious 7 movie in 30 years, and maybe in 15 years, may not have any context for why is Paul Walker's character Brian O'Connor just driving off into the distance and not saying too much to Dom Toretto. But they might still get the idea, oh, they're just done doing the criminal heists and stuff like that, so they're going to go do their own thing. Movies back in the day used to just end on a whim. Like the heist would almost immediately be done, then credits, boom, you're done. So having a lot of explanation into where people are going, and then there's droning on and on about where everybody went. Tyrese opened the garage, Ludacris did that, and Dom doing that. Dom's having a cookout with family and stuff like that. It's like we don't always need to get that, and I feel like what James Wan does an excellent job of doing is showing instead of telling. Dom could have been sitting down around the cookout or something like that, and everyone's just like, you know what, let's give some exposition about why Brian's not here or where he's going to go off to. They could have been very quote unquote, I don't want to say lazy, but they could have taken the easy way out, and they didn't. They didn't do that. And I know that they have some like CGI, quote unquote, Paul Walker uh, face, I guess, expressions and stuff like that and certain stuff. But I think generally it's pretty tasteful, and it's not like they're trying to exploit him or his memory or anything like that. So With saying that, the ending of this I feel like is one of the stronger endings the of the series, and I was actually pretty impressed about that. Anyways, that's a long-winded way of saying $250 million ain't shit these days. Because what we got, movies almost twice that much now. Movies are going to be $500 million. Going to be Avatar level soon, if we're not careful. Furious 7 premiered at the TLC Chinese Theater in LA on April 1st, 2015, and was released in the US on April 3rd by Universal Pictures. The film has commercial success and received positive reviews for its revenge plot. Wan's direction, performances, action sequences, and emotional tribute to Walker, with many considering it to be the best film in the franchise. I think it's probably tied between 5 and 1. It's kind of interesting because if you really think about it, most Fast and Furious movies, those first 6, 7, even the worst one, most people don't like 2 that much. I still think that is a really fun movie. So there's almost not a bad Fast and Furious movie up until maybe 8. And I feel like even 8 is pacing wise not that great. It's kind of hard to live up to something as big as 7. What I think they should have done is more of a soft reset, soft reboot a little bit more. I know they had the Hobbs and Shaw stuff, I think, come in between that, but still, I honestly think that 8 is probably the lowest, then 9. We'll continue on because I don't want to talk too much into those movies yet. So it's grossed over 1.5 billion worldwide, making it the third highest grossing film of 2015 and the fourth highest grossing film of all time at the time of its release. It has set a record for the second highest opening weekend of its time, grossing 397.6 million worldwide. It was the second highest grossing film of 2015 out of the domestic box office and became the highest grossing film of the franchise in the first 12 days of its theatrical release. A sequel, The Fate of the Furious, was released in April 2017, just 2 years later. And so, again, the quick turnaround of these films and the extensive, quote unquote, diverse cast that they have on this film is some of the big box office draws, especially worldwide. Worldwide, these, they eat it up. North America is starting to have less and less return for the Fast and Furious. I think probably since 7. I don't know if 8 surpassed 7, but again, we'll discuss that when we get there. This is one of the longest running movies of the Fast and Furious franchise, I believe. Let me see. I had it up there for a second. I think it's coming up behind Fast 9. Let me see. This was the longest of the Fast and Furious movies upon its release at 2 hours and 17 minutes until Fast F9, The Fast Saga 2021, 6 years later at 2 hours and 25 minutes. And I think that actually is hurting the film franchise as they continue to get longer. They don't need to get longer. So this was about as long as I think it can get with the pacing still being good. Cinematography, Stephen F. Winden, same guy as the previous F5, and I believe he might have done F6 on the cinematography. Yep, same guy on 6. So we're bringing back the whole Fast and Furious family. Got the same writers, like I said, and the other ones. Got to bring the whole family on the front side of the screen and the back side of the screen. Let's get into the plot of Fast and Furious 7. Now, you can be listening to this review in full and early through patreon.com/LuckyDog Podcast. You can also find all the links in the description and on LuckyDogPodcast.com. Again, helping support your local podcasters always lets them know you like what you're hearing. If you don't have the dollars to support, remember Patreon's starting at as low as $1, but if you can't support financially, you can support free. Subscribe, follow, like on all of the social media platforms. There we go. We don't have to like go through all the fucking individual ones. There's so many ones these days. Like how many social medias do we need? And then in like 10 years, there's probably only going to be like 3 left. Or there's going to be like 20. And then I got to upload, do a reel, do a TikTok, do Instagram and Facebook, hashtag family, social network. Like there's so fucking many of them. Can we just do the hashtag family network or something like that? Like that would be a lot easier for everyone. So that's my small bumper and way of letting everyone know we are getting into the spoiler section. If you want to wait and watch this podcast later, pause it, come back, you know what to do. You always got to come back, have some fun, and listen and watch the cast and review with us. So let's hop into the plot of hashtag bro family Furious 7. First thing I gotta like say about Furious 7 is they show the Fast and the Furious title. It doesn't, and it's written out that way on the screen. So is it Furious 7 or is it not? Like, what is going on here? I guess ever since the second one, they've never liked playing by the rules of having a normal sequence. Fast and Furious being the first one, Too Fast, Too Furious, the second one. That's when they started messing with it. Fast and Furious Tokyo Drift, still the easiest one to remember. Fast and Furious 2009, the fourth one. Like, that's kind of not very memorable at all. Fast 5, everyone remembers that. That's kind of good. 2011. Fast and Furious 6, kind of boring. Furious 7, I guess it gets in there. The Fate of the Furious, it's kind of hard to say. And Fate 8, I guess that's why it works. And F9, I guess, because isn't F9 like a car or something like that? I don't know. I'm kind of okay. So and then Fast X, I guess they've always liked to play with the title a little bit. But everybody knows it's Fast and the Furious family title. So let's hop into this unique opening we have right here. You're gonna see me looking down on my notes because I took some extensive, hard to read notes over here. So if I'm sipping some coffee, I'm definitely not reading my notes. Yeah, Cafe Bustelo, boosted by Cafe Bustelo, empowered by Cafe Bustelo. This is not an ad. I literally have Cafe Bustelo on deck all day, every day. Just saying that that shit gets me going. It's like I'm ready to go vroom vroom hashtag family with some coffee in my system. So here's the plot. After defeating Owen Shaw and securing pardons for their past crimes, Dominic Toretto, family, Brian O'Connor, and the team have returned to the U.S. to live normal lives. They probably have to get like 5 or 6 pardons almost every other movie because they commit all these damn international crimes. Like, my lord. From stealing DVDs to stealing gasoline to stealing God's eye.